Welcome to Pitch It To Me podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of Flesh and Blood design. As always, each episode is hosted by three handsome hosts, but you'll have to take my word for it. Today will be our inaugural smorgasbord episode. On Red Pitch, Clark will delve into the color scaling fundamental to Flesh and Blood design. On Yellow Pitch, Fuzzy will tell you a story about his three friends named Timmy, Johnny, and Spike. And on Blue Pitch, Joel will talk about his obsession with alternate win cons. You can find us across all socials such as TikTok and Instagram at Pitch It To Me Podcast. I'm Clark.
I'm Fuzzy.
And I'm Joel.
We are very happy today to announce that for the first time in this podcast's history, all three hosts have a job! For maybe a week or two.
So the previous record was we all had a job for one day, and then I got laid off like literally the next day.
Yeah, I got the job, and then Joel immediately got laid off.
Though I won't really be working much during the summer, so we'll probably be able to keep this up for like 1 week. You can tell based on the quality of our podcast that at least one of us has been unemployed for the entire time running it.
And we've been able to just be like, I got nothing going on.
I have been killing it with the audio. I'm not gonna lie. I've been on my game.
Joel's like been stepping up while he's doing the job search.
I'd be doing outtakes. I'd be getting close to an hour on time. All that good stuff.
Yeah. So today we're doing something a little bit different with our episode. What's a smorgasbord? Well, rather than having all of our pitches surrounding one central larger topic, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. It's going to be a smorgasbord of sorts, a grab bag, if you will, a plethora, a cornucopia.
So this idea is
potpourri.
Potpourri.
No, that's a poopy spray.
No, yes, potpourri is a poopy spray, but it also is like a miscellaneous mix.
Got
like
it.
our podcast, a miscellaneous mix.
So we did a poll in our Discord fairly recently, and a lot of people were just like, do whatever the fuck you want. So we're gonna try out the idea.
They also I want to really be specific here because this is still going to be very structured. Mm-hmm. We have the same amount of scripting going into our episode. It's not going to be like a more relaxed version of our podcast necessarily, but instead of there being one major topic for the entire hour, there are going to be smaller topics that we're bringing to the table that we each wanted to discuss. Yeah. That's the difference.
And each one of these topics that we've chosen were topics that we've had very long conversations about making a larger episode around.
Yeah.
But every single time we keep kind of falling short on okay, but what's the third pitch? Or what's my angle in all of this?
Mm-hmm. We're stupid critical of what actually gets turned into a podcast episode.
Yes.
And all three of these almost made the cut to be an entire episode. So if one of these pitches really speaks to you and you want to hear a full episode about it, we would love to hear that, because if one person does that, we probably literally will make that episode.
Yeah. But at the same time, each of us have probably crammed what we wanted to say about the topic into this. So if you feel like we touched on most of what was said, then it probably isn't enough for a full pitch.
Yeah, ultimately, we've gotten a lot of praise about how structured we are compared to other podcasts, and we like to keep that value in our podcast, but we also just want to talk about stuff that just can't make a full episode, and we'd love to expand on anyone that you find really interesting.
Yeah.
I think we're going to lead things off with Clark.
Yes! Wow, that was so much energy coming from you, Fuzzy.
What is your one topic that you really wanted to bring to the table today?
Yeah, pitch
Holy
me this
shit,
idea.
He's full fucking YouTube right now. So I want to talk about color scaling. Color scaling is a very basic idea in Flesh and Blood, right? This is the idea of one, there's the standard rates, right? We expect a red card to attack for 4 value, and then a yellow to attack for 3 value, and a blue to attack for 2 value. It's all the same card, just goes 4, 3, 2. Think wounding blow, right? It's a nice, generic, no-go again, 0 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 2. And block value stays the same throughout. I'm very interested in this base mechanic of Flesh and Blood because it does a lot of very interesting things to the game, I think. And it really helps it, right? The trade-off of ideas is that you have the least amount of resources created, but the highest power level. And then there's a middle ground. And then there is the most resources created for the lowest power level.
Right.
But this is different for non-attack actions and attack action cards, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Like, if we expect a red to always give us 4 value, why is it then that non-attack action cards at its best at red provide 3 value?
Oh, I feel like I have the answer to that question, and it's because the attack costs an action point. Like, the way that you're formulating things is a little bit different than I'm used to thinking of the value of a card. Mm-hmm. Like, a card gives you 3 points. If you spend an action point, it should give you 1 more point. So an action point is literally worth 1 point of value when you're trying to decide how much a card should be giving you back, with a lot of flexibility to it. But these non-attack actions that pump your attacks usually give you 3. And there are definitely exceptions, like Read the Runes only gives you 3 rune chance.
Read the Runes was exactly what I was going to say.
But Read the Runes also stacks value over time, and any card in Flesh and Blood that gives you value that you can bank indefinitely tends to give you less of that value immediately, like Energy Potion.
Sure. Why the fuck does Cast Bones exist then?
Well, Cast the Bones is random. You can build around it to make it really reliable, but it's not always going to give you 6 points. It's not always going to give you 5.
So Fuzzy's correct, but it's also the brute randomness, quote unquote, that like isn't random when you build around it.
And
It's the brute randomness I love.
And Majestics and Legendaries are allowed to break the value a little bit higher, especially when it's gated with
You know, that's
variants.
one of the things I want to talk about, because you look at something like Runic Reckoning, which is a Runeblade non-attack action card with Go Again, that is a 1 for +3, which is actually the common rate that we can expect, with no conditions. Like, just next attack gains +3, that costs 1 resource, not 0 resources. Come to Fight is a 1 for +3, and Runic Reckoning as a Majestic can get reduced to 0 if you control a rune chant. That's the Majestic power level increase. It's a Come to Fight plus.
They also,
cost reduction.
both of those block for 3.
Yes.
And like, the math I've always heard usually factors that in. Like, it's a very loose rule, but if you add up the cost of the card, plus the block value, plus the attack power, plus if it spends an action point, that all adds up to 8, usually. Mm-hmm. It's the rule of 8.
Ooh, interesting.
So what would the case be for something like Captain's Call? That's what popped into my mind.
Right.
Because
the flexibility reduces it even a little bit more.
Right. So it's a 0 cost, 2 block, and then it gives you +2 or Go Again for your next attack action. But the way that it scales from red to blue is the type of attack action that gets these bonuses instead of the buffs themselves.
I love that you mentioned that, because it really changes. I mean, like, that's the big thing I want to touch on at the end. So actually, I'm going to hold off on that, Joel.
Okay.
The different ways that we can see it scale. But I think we've started to see LSS play with it a little bit more in their design, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah.
Because it shows that they're getting comfortable, but it also shows that they're starting to exhaust the very basic, like, how interesting can you make an attack going from 6-5-4?
Right.
Right? At a certain point, it starts to lose a lot of that excitement. So they got to find other ways of doing that. And by the way, the reason why I think non-attack action cards are rated a little bit lower is because as breakpoints increase, they actually become harder to block. So the breakpoint of 4 is easier to block than a breakpoint of 7.
And that's kind of why Earthlore Surge is so good.
Yes.
Because it pumps you by so much. And all it like has a big investment up front where not only does it cost resources, but you also have to have another card in order to play.
Yeah.
You basically need a 4-card hand in order to play Earthlore Surge. The power level is so good because you're able to push some card, hopefully one with an awesome on-hit, up into the realm of, like, you have to give me your whole hand in order to block this.
Yeah. Similarly to, like, how Rake the Embers is incredibly powerful because it prevents 3 sources of 1 damage, which is a lot harder to block physically than 1 source of 3 damage, right? One takes 3 cards, another one takes a single card.
Right.
So, like, I think there's some interesting math in there, and that's why I think non-attack action cards scale weirdly. But we also see a lot of the interesting scaling in non-attack action cards. So I wanted to get us thinking about that. they've also been known to break these standards, like Fuzzy mentioned, with Majestics and Legendaries. Very typically, they sort of break it on those. We see Mystic now really change it in an interesting way. Mystic is completely built around the blue cards, which have very low power level. And if you are building a limited set environment where you are trying to encourage everyone to take a lot of blues, how does anybody die before fatigue? Right?
It's like they're hitting each other with pillows tied to their fists.
Yeah. all the power level values are just so low that, like, it's not worth it, right? So they had to do something. So what did they do? You can make your blue a red on a condition of playing another blue. And now we are starting to see how, I think the very interesting aspect of how they're messing with that power scaling, right? It's a blue that can be a red on certain hands, or if you build your deck a certain way. Then you are getting the best of both worlds, a blue pitch with red power level, which I think we can all agree would be ridiculous.
Yep.
Right. It would be one with something with no weaknesses.
We've sort of talked about, like, what would brutes do to run a blue Blood Rush Bellow? And the answer is too much. Blue Blood Rush Bellow would be insane for brute decks.
Yeah, the difference between pitching for yellow and pitching for blue and brute is pretty substantial. And so much so that, the difference between KO and Reinar's playability is strictly because KO gives you access to way more powerful blues that do more than what the generic blue would do.
When you guys talk about blue Blood Rush Bellow, are you talking about Blood Rush but pitches for blue instead of pitching for yellow?
Both that and giving a +1 anthem instead of a +2 anthem.
Got it.
So with Mystic doing this interesting power scaling, I found it very interesting. And there is another fascinating way that they've worked in power scaling into the newest set. Have you guys really looked at Essence of Ancestry?
No, what does it do?
It is a new Illusionist card, just base Illusionist card. It has Ward 2 at all 3 points.
Oh.
This is very different, right? Because normally we would see Ward be the scalable number, right? Ward 3, 2, 1. Here it's Ward 2 across all 3 cards. But then it has an effect that changes based on color. So the red card says, when this pops, if you control no other Illusionist auras, prevent the next source of damage from a red. Now I want you to understand, if KO Blood Rush Bellows and throws a claw for 6, because I'm assuming they had a Miter on the previous turn, and then that pops your board, including this, and then they throw a Savage Beatdown for 14, this is giving you 16 points of value. It warded 2, and then it stopped Savage Beatdown for 14.
Pretty good.
What? Oh, because it's just a source.
Any source.
Wow. Wait a minute. That's actually gas.
Massive against Kano as well, right? That Blazing coming in for 27? 0.
It can just be played around by, like, not dealing multiple reds in the turn or, like, trying to get around it that way.
Yeah. But this really breaks the value capability of the card. And instead, its power scaling is like, well, do you really want this to be your red? It's only Ward 2 at red. That's not really very good, right? But at blue, it only stops damage from a blue source. Now, sometimes that's, I don't know, a Diabolic Offering from Levia. It's pretty reasonable to stop that. Other times, it's, I don't know, maybe it's a Cranial Crush. Wow, that's getting tons of value. Like, there's a lot of variability in how much value this card can get specifically, because they have broken from the pattern of just the 4-3-2 number, and the ability to break that, I think, gets me very excited about building with it.
That's very true. It's a unique card in that aspect. It does have 2 cousins, though, because they actually did this with every class in Part the Mistveil, where it's Essence of Ancestry body, and all the body cards have something to do with reds as they're scaling, you know? Like, aspect of tiger body combos with reds, whereas the blue aspect of tiger combos with blues, or art of desire body gives you a life and lets you draw a card if you banish a red card with it. And I also feel like this harkens back to the backup protocols. Where like it's specifically interacting with other cards of that color. I think that's a really cool way of scaling, quote unquote.
Yes. It could hearken to, I think, some really interesting things in the future. So now I want to open it up. Can you guys think of interesting ways we can see this color scaling done differently in the future?
I think it's funny that you guys assume a blue Blood Rush Bellows would give you +1. What if it still gave you +2 power, but you only draw 1 card instead of 2?
Oh.
Yes.
And then the implied red Blood Rush Bellows would still give you +2 to all your brute attacks, but it would make you draw 3 cards instead of just 2.
Actually, that card would be insanely fucking broken.
Yeah.
Drawing the card.
I know that.
Drawing the cards is actually the wildest part about Blood Rush Bellows.
Would you play a blue Blood Rush Bellow if it still gave +2 but only drew you 1 card?
I think I would,
Not
honestly.
in Levia, but in other brutes I would.
It's still a blue block 3.
But I like how you brought up the card draw being a scalable effect. I want to look at attack action cards here. I want an attack action card to have the same power level at red, yellow, blue, but change the effect that is printed on the card. Maybe we have a Rune Blade that attacks for 3, but it creates 3 rune chance, then 2 rune chance, then 1 rune chant. So it's a 2 for 3 that makes 3 rune chants, or a 2 for 3 that makes 2, or a 2 for 3 that makes 1. Still follows the general color scaling pattern there of you're creating 6 value, but rather than the attack changing, it is the effect on the attack itself that is changing.
Yeah, for mine, I'm kind of thinking of Bolton here because you guys have heard me complain a lot about Via the Vanguard being only yellow because it's such a strong card. And so I'm wondering if there's like either a light warrior card or a warrior card in general where like if you play it, it's at like, 3 power for each one or whatever, like shitty number because LSS hates warrior. And then the effect would be like you pick what color cannot be blocked or cannot defend this attack. So like red, you can't defend with red. Yellow, you can't defend with yellow. Blue, you can't defend with blue. And so that gives warrior a bit more ways to like be tricky to block. And it's not overtly a attack reaction rather than an attack action that can start the chain off and not rely so heavily on like the weapon centric game plan.
Something like this is what I've noticed is that they like to pick a number that's yellow and then they scale it. So maybe this would be like a 1 for +2, and then you could remove a red, remove a yellow, remove a blue card from the blocking chain on this attack.
Oh, that would be cool actually.
Right? Now obviously everyone loves the red because they could hit D reacts, but then sometimes it's just going to be a 1 for 2, which is not a good value on a red.
Oh yeah.
Right? So like you do actually need to find the moments where you can get the maximum value from this. That's about all I got for red pitch. Thank you guys for giving me the space to talk about this.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun to talk more about color scaling in a whole episode someday. There's other examples that we didn't have time to get into that I would love to talk about.
Yeah, if you guys wanted to hear more on this topic, feel free to leave a comment, talk to us in our Discord. We'd love to hear about it. And now for something completely different. Fuzzy, tell us about your these new friends you've made.
I would love to. So, I want to talk today about Timmy, Johnny, and Spike. And those 3 words are going to have a little bit of resonance to, I think, a lot of Magic the Gathering players. This is going to feel a little bit like a history lesson since the ideas that I'm going to be talking about today have been floating around in the Magic the Gathering community for literally over a decade. Because in 2013, Mark Rosewater, that lead designer for Magic the Gathering, he tends to write like articles about the game, which makes it really cool and inspiring for myself, who just loves game design, to hear about what they're thinking about when they go into designing the game.
He also does a really great podcast every single time he commutes back from work.
I think he does it weekly, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's not a daily podcast, but like he does a podcast as he literally drives away from the office where he just got done designing the game.
Yeah. And I would say like that also kind of inspired me to podcast a little bit too, because he made it sound really easy because he literally just records on his phone on the way to work, right? And we all eat it up because he's the lead designer of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, so status helps.
Yeah, Brian, go get on it.
And this article is about the way that you design trading cards, knowing that there's diversity in the community that you're designing for. That not all trading card players are a monolith, they don't all think the same, and they don't all play the game for the same reasons. And Mark Rosewater coined 3 main, what he called psychographic profiles, to try to explain how Wizards of the Coast designs different cards for different people. And there was like 3 that they started with. There are others that exist that are talked about all the time. But I'm going to stick to these 3 for today because I only have my 15-minute section. So Wizards of the Coast gave each of these 3 profiles a name to help personify them. Mm-hmm. And in their original article, Mark Rosewater used 3 male names. These were kind of later expanded to like Timmy and Tammy, Johnny and Jenny. Spike is just Spike. Spike could be a guy or a girl.
Good old gender neutral Spike.
I'm going to be using he, him pronouns as we're discussing these, mostly because those are the ones used in the original article. First, I want to start off with Timmy/Tammy. Timmy enjoys an experience. He's a power gamer. He loves to play trading cards because of the potential for big, exciting new things to happen. He wants to feel powerful and like he dominated his opponent in a game. You might be a Timmy player if you get excited at the thought of maybe transforming your hero into a badass robot that forces your opponent to discard cards and comes with built-in armor and cup holders. And in my opinion, some cards that really embody what a Timmy player might want to see would be Crippling Crush, Cash-In, and Terminator Tank.
Or cards like Towering Titan.
Absolutely.
Oh, Towering Titan is very much a Timmy.
Or like
card.
any Kano player. To me, identifies as a Timmy.
If you get excited, those really big numbers on cards, and you're like, they can print a number that big on a Flesh and Blood card? That's a pretty Timmy motivation, I think.
Yeah, and it's cool because we see that kind of all over the place in Fab. It shows up in multiple classes.
For sure.
If you're trying to design cards or market them towards Timmy players, then you want to include trading cards that are really flashy and have big, powerful effects that offer that power fantasy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a competitively viable card, but if it has maybe a really big, expensive card that does a lot of damage, that would be a very Timmy-esque card. Mm-hmm. Next, there's Johnny/Jenny, and Johnny enjoys a creative outlet. He wants to win, but he wants to win on his own terms. And as such, he wants to build his own deck and innovate. A Johnny really doesn't want to play other people's decks. He wants to build it himself, since that allows him to show off his creativity. You might be a Johnny if you like to build lots of different decks, or if you're always looking for new combos. And in my opinion, some cards that really entice those Johnny players might be Shiana Diamond Gemini, Rock,
Yeah, that's what's up.
Shaden Death Hydra.
Interesting.
Clark, I know you had an example too.
Yeah, I talked about Moonshot being a very Johnny card. I mean, I identify as a Johnny.
Clark is one of the most Johnny players I know.
And I loved Moonshot. When Moonshot got printed, everyone's like, this card sucks. This card's never going to be good. And I immediately said, bet. I got into the ring and I got my ass kicked. But you know what? I went in there.
If you're trying to design cards to appeal to those Johnny players, then you'd want them to be complex, you'd want them to synergize with others, and you might not want them to be too strong. You probably want it to be an open question, like, could this be strong? Like, printed at a power level where you have to work and build around it in order to figure out if it's good. It's not good at first glance. And lastly, we have Spike. Spike enjoys winning. He's a competitive player, and his focus is on doing what he can to achieve victory. You might be a Spike if you like to play whatever deck or cards are the strongest at a given time. And if you're like going through spoiler season and trying to evaluate the cards to see like which ones are going to be the most valuable, that's that Spike mindset. And in my opinion, some cards that would specifically entice Spike players would be Codex of Frailty, Command and Conquer,
Yep.
Yep.
and I would say Luminaris Angel's Glow, the newest Luminaris.
Another card I'm thinking of too is like Hold the Line. I think like that is an objectively like key piece at targeting specific decks, and you'd probably only run it if you're like really trying to combat like what's at the top of the meta.
Yeah, a lot of these silver, bullet, blue generics really seem to fall into that line.
If you're trying to design cards to appeal to spike players, you'd want them to be powerful and meta viable. You'd want them to be designed to be played in tournaments. Those are the like pushed cards, right, that you see in packs that are obviously strong and like are $40 on release. Like those feel very spiked to me.
Yes.
Now, I'm not trying to tell you that these three make up the only ways that you can enjoy Flesh and Blood. It's not an exhaustive list, or in trading cards in general. And as a matter of fact, like Mark Rosewater added to this list later, and if I had more time, I would talk about those too. And I'm also not trying to tell you that you have to be one or the other. I'm not trying to put anyone into little boxes, right? Personally, I find myself really embodying all three at different times, depending on my mood.
Yeah.
I hope that like you guys see that in me too, where I can get my Spike moments, my Johnny moments,
absolutely.
my Timmy moments.
I mean, even me, right? Like, as someone who I think I've always identified with the Johnny thing, and like I've always gone towards that side, I think you'll still see me like being very excited over big cards with big effects. I mean, even just Moonshot in and of itself. And so many, I think, of Johnny cards are also sort of Timmy cards.
It's a Jimmy card.
Yeah, because you want to build enough synergy around it that it becomes the Timmy card, right? That you get the big, cool, powerful effect.
Right.
And when you see your deck doing those things, that's when you get the little warm fuzzies inside.
Yep. And that's how you know, like, a trading card game is designed well when people enjoy it for multiple reasons at the same time. You could even break that down to a singular card. If multiple different people like that card or that game for multiple different reasons, that's how you know it's well designed. And being able to like break those up and personify them or put them into these like weird boxes does help us evaluate and establish whether or not it's doing that design well. There are a few cards that I've picked out that I think do a good job of embodying all three of these profiles we're talking about. First I would pick Cosmic Awakening. That's the new part, the Mistveil card.
Yeah, baby!
That like could be a 9 for 20 if you pitch three cheese cards.
Yeah.
I've been trying so hard to make that card work in my Enigma testing.
I've heard some pro players testing it and liking it, and that's how like, oh, I'm okay. Spike seal of approval. And like the Johnny in you wants to be like, okay, if I really just focus my entire deck around making this a 9 for 20, how feasible could that be? How reliably can I do this? And Timmy's like, 20?
20 on a blue?
My next nominee for all three would be Channel Mount Heroic. Ooh. I know this card gets a lot of hate because it's like a strong meta viable card that kind of like dominated or had a very strong sense in the meta for a while. So that's the Spike seal of approval. But you can also really put a lot of effort into building around this card and trying to get it out as long as possible. If you wanted to just build your deck around Channel Mount Heroic, that would totally work. It's calling for it when it asks you like, hey, the more Earth cards you pitch, the longer I get to stay around. How long can you do that, huh? How long do you think you could keep me on the field? And also just +3 to all of your attacks gives you that feeling of dominance and power through all of your cards.
One example that I've seen that card broken down in a really granular way of like how efficient you can be with it was Chris Iali's piloting it to the second place finish of the World Finals, and how he would run cards like Flex or Red or Thor Surge, which were not really run all that much, but he was able to do that because he wanted to get more things in his pitch zone because the rest of your cards were like 0 cost non-attacks, and your sword was only 1, so you could only pitch for it like 1 time. So that usage of it really highlighted like, you know, it's obviously really good, but think about how much better it could be if you built your deck in a very specific way.
Yeah. You can play 3 0 for 4s and try super hard to like draw the perfect hand to get that 9 value out of it. Or you can just keep it around for 4 turns.
Exactly.
My last nominee would be Blazing Ether. I think Blazing Ether does a good job of embodying all three as well. It's the key finishing card that allows you to completely dominate games in tournaments.
Oh, the 0 cost Kano spec?
Yeah, the one that deals X damage based on how much arcane you've already done.
Man, we've mentioned Blazing Ether twice this episode.
that card just screams, you're dead, if it's ever played.
You play it, and your opponent like gets completely wiped out. Like, Do you guys have any other ideas for things that you feel like are so good at embodying all the different things people might want to feel in a Flesh and Blood game.
Honestly, Blood Rush Bellow.
Dude,
Okay,
I was
yeah.
just thinking that. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, it is auto-include. If you're playing Brute and you're not playing Blood Rush Bellow, then, like, people are going to look at you weird. But, like, at the exact same time, you do really need to brew your deck around getting the maximum value out of it, right? Like, KO is now trying to get maximum value out of it by working in more 2-for-some things with Go Again, right? And Reinar is trying to get maximum value out of it by, like, finding ways of maybe chaining it together with multiple intimidates to make sure that that plus power is just really hitting face. Whereas Levia is able to, like, build around the 6s and the blue count and, like, guarantee that claw something follow-up. So, like, there is a real Johnny element to how you need to build around Blood Rush Bellow. But then also, 8 to 10 value out of one card.
All my attacks are like hitting you so hard.
One card I was thinking of was Decimator Great Axe.
Okay.
Because number one, like fatigue players probably gravitate towards it because it makes blocks so hard. It usually requires 2 cards or like you're just taking damage at that point.
And fatigue players, they like self-identify as fatigue players.
Oh, if
and
you're
then-
playing fatigue, you're trying to win. And I don't fault them because I love playing fatigue, but like that's objectively like a spike playstyle, I think. Because like if you're trying to fatigue, you're also trying to figure out like what are the ways where I can make the most efficient 2-card trades for my 1 card over the course of the entire game, which requires a lot of pre-planning, a lot of focus, and a lot of intimate knowledge about the meta.
Yeah.
But I also think, because I was trying to figure out how to include this in my Dorinthia deck when I was practicing for like, ProQuest season. And I was like, how can I swing twice with this to get Dynamo value? I'm like, I need to go to bed. This is my most Timmy moment I've ever had in my life.
That's so funny.
So I think there's ways it could be, applied to all three.
I would also say Decimator Great Axe is just a card that says run Felling Swing.
Yeah. Which I think is a Johnny card.
A very Timmy card.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Timmy card.
Yeah, because it's just saying, hey, fat number on your axe.
I'm fucking dying, Joel. How can I swing twice with axe so I can get my value dynamo triggers? Oh shit, I need to go to bed. I'm getting too lost in the sauce. It's
No, for
so
real.
funny.
That's what keeps me up at night. Not taxes or anything. It's just a swing axe twice.
Oh my
Bro,
god.
honestly, that is a Johnny instinct because I will roll over in bed at 3:30 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
and just be like, guys, what do you think about this in the class?
So I'm so happy that I got to talk about all of that on the podcast because I have wanted to for a while and I
Yeah.
could talk for a long time about this stuff.
Oh,
But-
Fuzzy, you were even saying you have stretch content.
Oh yeah, I have stuff that I wrote down and I didn't get to today because I'm gonna save it for later. Like, what other like profiles are out there? I've been hinting at it.
If you're interested in more of what Fuzzy has to say on this topic, be sure to leave a comment on YouTube, Discord, whatever. Let us know, and we just might do another episode on it.
Who knows? With that, I'm gonna pass the microphone off to my buddy Joel.
Let's go.
All right, MC Joel on the mic. Here we go. Boom, 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 boom.
I can never bring
Sorry,
myself.
sorry. It's boots and cats. Boots and cats. Boots and cats.
So for today, I have been pretty obsessed with the idea of alternate win cons and how they exist in other games and like what capacity it could exist in Flesh and Blood. So to start off, I'm going to start off with the history of alternate win cons. Mostly from Magic the Gathering. I haven't really paid too much attention to other games, but I'll mention them as we go along. So in Magic the Gathering, there used to be a creature that was played a lot in blue decks because when you draw from an empty library in Magic the Gathering, you lose the game. So there are cards like Laboratory Maniac where if you play him and he sticks on the board, if you were to draw a card from an empty library, instead of losing, you win the game. So that's an alternate win con. It's something you could play towards. And if you've ever heard of Magic player talking about how they do combos, it usually involves infinite combos that are really easy, and sometimes you do it on accident, and you use things like that to exploit it. So there's also another one called Liliana's Contract, which says if you control 4 or more demons with different names or cards, essentially, then you win the game on your upkeep. And the last one I'm going to talk about is Helix Pinnacle, which is a 1 mana or one resource aura, and if it sticks on shut up. And if it sticks on the board and you can put 100 counters by paying one resource for each counter, then you win the game. So
Actually, would be sick to see in Flesh and Blood.
exactly, yeah, I agree.
You got random blues, just chuck them in there, baby.
And that's pretty much the only examples I want to bring up with Magic, because a lot of them are derivative of these like basic effects, like controlling permanence for periods of time or drawing from an empty library. And another combo that I really, really like, it's very iconic in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Exodia. And that's when you have 5 cards that it's like the both arms, both legs, and the head of Exodia. And if you have them in your hand, you can reveal them. If you do, you win the game. Yeah. So it's literally just and you've probably heard it one reference to Dash Inventor Extraordinaire, because when she gets all of her pistol items, it's considered Exodia. Like you're in a winning game state, you basically win. So the only current example of this is Regicide in Flesh and Blood. And it says when this hits a royal hero, they lose the game. And when the combat chain closes, you lose the game. So it's kind of like a one-off, like last-ditch effort, because it's also legendary. So you'll have one copy. And it's also a very hard requirement because there's currently only one royal hero. He's only Blitz. And there's like Crown of Dominion, but they're not going to run it into Arachne.
It's kind of funny how like the first alternate win con in the game is like you have to hit a hero where they have a specific headpiece or they are literally the emperor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the second alternate win con is you're playing against Arachne and they fumble it against you.
It almost came up in a game on stream against a Dromai because they forgot to side out Crown of Dominion. I think that was their only their headpiece, but they almost got the Regicide win. I don't know if they did. I think they actually conceded before it happened.
Fascinating.
But anyways, that's the only example in Flesh and Blood so far. So now that we've kind of gone over sort of the history of alternate win cons and how they exist in other games, the reason why this concept was so interesting to me is because as Dromai was getting closer to LL, Prism was rising in popularity for some reason, and then came the loop, the ALS loop, the Arc Light Sentinel loop, which constitutes basically which consists of making it so that your opponent has to attack into Arc Light Sentinel every single turn for their one action, and basically end their turn unless they set up prior.
For like hopefully the rest of the game.
Right. So the reason why it's called the loop is because you just keep doing it every single turn, but the amount of resources it require is pretty substantial. I think it's like something like 10 mana or 10 resources.
Yeah, it not only requires a ridiculous amount of resources, it also requires a very particular setup that the opponent can see coming and interrupt. Like, I would argue most of modern Prism games, they never actually get the loop off.
So you say that, but there was at the AGE, like shortly after it aired on stream, there was a Prism player by the name of Zane. I think he won one actually at AGE prior, but he looped like 4 times that day, like very, very comfortably. All that to say, it's definitely doable. It just requires a lot of pieces. It requires 2 auras and 2 angels, and then whatever else you can scrounge up leading up to that.
And then a ridiculous amount of resources.
Yeah. Right. It requires Vestiges of Soul to be on and a lot of like light blues in your hand. And it's not necessarily an alternate win condition because nothing says you win the game, but you put yourself in that winning position where it's really hard to claw out of, like I said, without previous, setup to fight out of it.
Or like what you mentioned with the pistol package for Dash. People literally call that Exodia.
Exactly. So why is it that some people can constitute the loop as an alternate win condition and some people just say, well, you didn't technically just win the game, so it's not an alternate win con? Like, what are some of the reasons why we might fight that?
I feel like the reason that some people would not call it an alternate win con is very similar to the reason why it's more healthier than an alternate win con. And that's technically there are outs that you have to kind of bring in advance. Like if you can generate multiple action points in a turn, you're breaking through the loop and it gets a lot better for you. You're able to break through it. But some decks literally don't have that, right? So it's kind of like you win the game if It's a lot like Arachne's like alternate win con, where they have to put in something specific in order for you to be able to get it off, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's based on what your opponent brings into the game. That kind of makes it healthier because it allows that interaction a little bit, either in deck building or in play.
Yeah. I would also say it's healthier because it doesn't just completely stop the game, right? Like, yes, one player may feel very, very choked by it, but the other player still needs to find a way of presenting damage to end up winning the game.
Right.
In Magic the Gathering, there's a couple of combos or board states which are literally like, now nobody can play any card ever. Call it a draw? And it's like, shut the fuck up. Why'd you build this?
I think that's a really good point, Clark. Like, is it healthier if the opponent has to sit there for 10 turns of Flesh and Blood without really being able to play? Or is it healthier if the game ends immediately? Like, that's a really big question that it's going to be different for different people.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So the reason why I constitute it as an alternate win con is because Flesh and Blood is so amazing to play because you have so much agency throughout the game. And this alternate win con, this ALS loop, takes away that agency. Similar to how Dash's pistol package, when she brings it in against specific heroes, when she has that set up, it takes away agency. You're just getting barraged by pistol shots, or you're just getting constantly time walked by ALS. So it puts you in a winning position where it just existing in Flesh and Blood is like it's such an antithesis to what makes Flesh and Blood good.
So would you say like it's no longer a game at that point? Like the game is over?
I think you can have to ask yourself, like, can I reasonably fight this out? Because even if you play a time snap potion after they resolve the combo, they just play a second ALS. Now you can't get out of it at all. So you have to play it prior. So in a lot of ways, you're just boned, you know?
You know what? It's so interesting because, one, I really discourage people from having the, like, well, they did that thing that invalidates me, time to just give up. Like, I think if I was doing that whenever I took 4 to 5 damage from Blood Debt in the mid game, I would just concede because it's like, oh, well, deck didn't give me the hand turn off Blood Debt. Guess I lose. Scoop it up. And it's like, no. Play it out. Play it out. Play to your outs. Even if you don't have outs, the opponent could always make a mistake. Like, I think it is worth it to go through the motions, but you should still always say to the opponent, all right, now it's on you. Time for you to not be wasting my time. Because I think if they ALS loop and then they just sit there and like only throw Angel for 4 and play an ALS every single turn, it's like, what are you doing here, buddy?
Well, that's the loop. You don't have a lot of resources to do other things because it costs so much to keep the loop going.
So I want to move on to some of the reasons why alternate win conditions don't work in Fab so far. Like some of the fail safes that Flesh and Blood has that make this like not legit. To your point, Clark, why this truly is not an alternate win con. Number one, Flesh and Blood doesn't have a very large card base to build lasting board states, minus Illusionist, of course. So there's nothing that, you know, that's like Liliana's Contract or Helix Pinnacle that you can like build up slowly and win the game from there. Aside from, you know, Dash's pistol package and the ALS loop, you know, there's not really a lot of board state. Also, fatigue is sort of a punishment for mistakes during the game, and it's not a game loss. When you have no cards left in deck, there's a lot of context in how the game gets there, whether you put a lot of pressure on your opponent or they put a lot of pressure on you. And so now you're kind of left, okay, can I end the game before I have to pass turn to them with just my last 4 cards in hand? Or if you're both, you know, like sub, you know, 8 to 10 cards, there's a lot of game left to be had there instead of just like, okay, I draw an empty library and I lose. There's so much more in those last 2 turns of Flesh and Blood that makes it really fun to play around. So it's probably a good thing that alternate win cons don't exist there.
Yeah. I think there's also, you can't really print a lot because there isn't a ton of widely available silver bullets. So this is what I'll say. Like, Warmongers, you could argue, is like a straight silver bullet to, say, certain heroes. But it's certain heroes, right? It's certain things. In Magic the Gathering, I think you can print a lot of permanents that say you win the game on them because every single quote unquote class, right? Every single color, regardless of what deck you're playing, has the ability to destroy a permanent.
Let alone splashing another color to deal with specific permanents.
Exactly, right? So like there's that flexibility of like I can then step into this other color. But every single color has the ability to just wipe a permanent off the field. So even if a permanent says I win the game on it, every single deck has play into that is accessible in their identity and is cheaply available. I think that's important because we see like warmongers get up to like $40. If they printed a generic 0 cost that said destroy target permanent, just destroy something in the arena, Jesus Christ, what would that card be costed? Like, how much would we pay for that card?
Potentially a lot.
There's cards like, I think Decimate it's called, where just like...
Yeah,
it's like
that's a
20-cent
card.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree with you there. Like, there's a lot of growing that Flesh and Blood has to do to not only allow alternate win cons, but more importantly, allow the ability to deal with these alternate win cons.
Yes.
I think like there are ones that we've talked about already that exist already that are sort of alternate win cons. Like, I think Icelander's combo deck, where you freeze all their permanents and then deal arcane damage based on it, like that already feels like sort of like, they call it OTK Icelander, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't say you win the game, but you're winning the game if you get the combo off.
Yeah. Here's 20 frostbites. Go ahead, try to play something. Also, here's 20 damage.
Yeah. Or like the new card that costs 9 and can swing for 20. Like, that feels like an alternate win con to me.
Yeah,
I don't know, I can block 12.
So there's also like alternate win con could mean I win the game if I get this like board set together, but it also could mean I am now defaulting to this alternate way that I could win the game, whether it be fatigue or some fat number with dominate, like Cosmic Awakening for 9 for 20, Shade and Death Hydra for like 14 dominate.
Yeah. Or like the Tear Limb from Limb Shade and Death Hydra combo.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Of like, now this is coming in for 26. What are you going to do about it?
Or like Quad Intimidate with Rhinar.
Yeah. I think this is all interesting because then what's the difference between alternate win con and just your win condition?
Yeah, like where's the line? We
Right.
want a game where there is flexibility in your game plan. So alternate implies that it's not the norm, but we don't want a norm. We want there to be diversity and variance in the cards and game plans that are bringing to the table.
So I think what really establishes ALS and the pistol package and why they've been given these like alternate win con sort of monikers while other win conditions haven't been given that is probably the fact that you build the entire deck around that one thing happening. Tear Limb from Limb, Shane, Death Hydra, you don't build the entire deck around. Chi into Cosmic Awakening is not something you build the entire deck around.
Right.
It isn't something that you are playing from on turn 0 to the very end of the game.
But I think you could with some of those cards.
You could, and that
No, but like, is that the entire strategy of the deck?
Well, it depends. So I'll reference Bolton here because he's actually a really good example of it. So there are some matchups where Bolton has to say, I literally cannot race this deck. I need to pack these specific cards so that I'm just going to block out, assemble the pieces, and I'm going to blow them out and put myself in a winning position. So, you know, the Lumina combo with Courage and Gallantry can reach, you know, like 30 is the baseline. That's when you want to be playing it. But it could reach 48, which if you're under 40, you probably lose the game on the spot.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so interesting to me, because Flesh and Blood already has a lot of these things ingrained in the game. We just don't consider them alt win cons because they don't say win the game. So I want to pose a question before we get too into the weeds. Are there any ideas that could exist in Flesh and Blood as an alternate win condition that don't involve being this new turtle combo deck?
I have an idea from a different game that I want to bring in here.
Awesome.
Okay.
Legends of Runeterra, I think, is very interesting to look at for this specific topic. One, because they have hero-centric builds, right? In Legends of Runeterra, you have a champion, which is a card you put in the deck, and you build the deck around that. Your champion also determines the regions, not unlike classes, that you then have to locate yourself in. You're allowed 2 different champions in your deck, so you can have 2 classes, quote unquote, that you're building around. You can take the cards from those areas, put them into your deck. It's not too dissimilar from how Flesh and Blood operates. And they do a lot of alternate win cons. There are two champions in Legends of Runeterra that have alternate win cons. There's Fiora, who I'm not going to talk about, and then there's Rise, who I do want to talk about. Rise says if you can build 5 of these little landmarks to put onto the field, and then you attack, you just win the game. But how do you make those landmarks? Well, there is one specific spell that can make them, or he makes one in your hand every single time he attacks, which you then need to cast. These landmarks also take a spot on your board, which means that you aren't able to play other creatures to attack and block with. So I think it's a nice little design because one, it's saying, hey, here's this obvious build around card. You need to spend time on it. You need to spend resources on it. You need to fulfill a condition to even start doing that. And then there is a drawback to your normal play pattern that would prevent you from doing this. So maybe you need to like put a card in Arsenal that can never leave Arsenal. So you just like lock off your Arsenal for the rest of the game. Or maybe you IP penalty yourself because you have to keep this one card in your hand. And then you only draw 3 cards every single turn. That's really rough.
Yep.
We know how bad that is in Flesh and Blood. But maybe if you like have a very specific card in Arsenal and in hand, and maybe like graveyard and ban, I don't know, right? Like you fulfill this like very unique condition that locked off all these options to your play, then you can have a card that says, if I hit, I win the game.
Right. I like that a lot, actually. I was not expecting that. Mostly because I don't know anything about Legends of Runeterra, but I like the workaround and the inclusion of like locking off zones and making it a really big detriment or a really big factor and not just an attack that wins the game.
I think I want to bring up Helix Pinnacle again. That thing that like you can pay resources to put lots of counters on it, and then if you get enough counters, you win the game. And I think the thing that I like most about Flesh and Blood is the direct interaction. I always attack your life total directly. You block directly with cards from hand, and then we draw a lot of cards so we can keep having that intense like one-on-one combat. And anything with a board state, I would like to see it retain that. So I think if I was going to put Helix Pinnacle in Flesh and Blood, aka if I got like hired by LSS tomorrow, I would like, one, try to make it so you discard pitch cards instead of actually pitch them. So maybe like if I discard a blue, I get to put 3 counters on the Helix Pinnacle. That way I'm not able to fatigue as well. And secondly, I'd want to give the opponent an ability to remove the counters by pitching their own cards or something.
Oh, yes.
That way, like, you can choose to use your cards to attack life points, or you can use your cards to get rid of counters on the Helix Pinnacle and slow it down.
You know, I love that in both of our examples here, Fuzzy, is that you see very clear counterplay examples. For me, like, you need to have a card in Arsenal. Well, guess what? Here's a CNC, right? There are these generic silver bullets built into stopping that play pattern.
Yeah, I agree. So as much as I would like more alternate win cons to exist in Flesh and Blood, I understand that like in a game where every decision matters and it's compounding mistakes that lose you the game in the end, something that just says, forget all that, you win, feels really bad. So I understand if it would never have a home in Flesh and Blood unless it's like really, really stringent conditions. But it's still fun to think about because it's something that I played with a lot in Magic the Gathering.
That was a lot of fun to talk about.
It was.
I could talk for a whole hour about alternate win cons.
I could definitely give it a go.
Cool. Well, with that being said, if the rest of you listeners would also love to hear another hour of it, feel free to put a comment on the YouTube channel or let us know in the Discord if you want to hear more about it. Other than that, I think I'm pretty much done with this discussion. Let's move on to the Arsenal Zone.
Listeners, the Arsenal Zone is the part of the podcast where we each shout out a card that has been on our minds lately and close to our hearts. Clark, why don't you go first?
Yes, this is a card I've been thinking a lot about recently. Definitely not a card I just looked up. I wanted to spend today talking about Uprising. No, not the set. The card, silly! Uprising is a red pitch 0 cost draconic action that says your next 4 draconic attacks this turn gain +1 attack power. Go again. It has null power and it blocks for 3. This card has been way outclassed and completely forgotten about.
I didn't know it blocks for 3. That's cool.
It does block for 3, and that's nice. A lot of the times, I think you can expect talented like class cards to only really block for 2 a lot of the time. But this blocks for 3, and it's a majestic. Now, at first glance, this card is pretty deserving of its power level. We talked a little bit in my set about, we talked a little bit in my pitch about how, you know, 0 cost non-attack action cards typically only give +3 on a very specific condition. You know, this card's a 0 that could give +4, and it has go again. Like, that's good. It breaks all the math, right? But 4 draconic attacks is actually really hard to pull off.
Especially if you're devoting 1 card in your hand to paying off for this 4.
Yeah. Now, like, you can see how both of the draconic heroes were meant to use this, with Ashwings coming in for 2 instead of 1, or Phi, you know, maybe recurring 1 or 2 Phoenix Flames to, like, have these very easy 0 cost go again cards to throw that are draconic. But ultimately, this card got abandoned because it never really found a home, because it wasn't ever really good enough. Because Dromeyes, if they already have a big giant board where they can throw 4 draconic attacks in a turn, they're already winning the game. They don't need this card to do it more. And Phi was already needing all the cards in his hand to really get his 4 or 5 wide chain links. And it was actually better for him to use ninja cards to make that happen than draconic cards to make that happen. So he was actually getting less value out of Uprising than, say, something like Spreading Flames.
Or even Art of War.
So this card just sort of sputtered out and died. Not unlike a lot of Uprisings.
It is funny that it's only 4 attacks.
Yeah, like 0 for 4 almost doesn't feel like enough when we see cards coming out now, like Prismatic Leyline or Cast Bones, where you can get upwards of 6+ value on a single 0 cost non-attack action card.
Do you think they put the 4 there just to have, like, because that's the same number as Rupture effects?
I think that was definitely the intention, is like you can do 3 and then a Draconic Rupture attack.
Like, they couldn't just put the number 5 on there instead of 4, because it would have been felt weird to have, like, your next 5 Draconic attacks, but Rupture's based on 4. Like,
yeah. Ultimately, I just think this card missed the mark, and I think is a point of contention in the Draconic design space. And it's just kind of...
It also seems like a symptom of like Draconic just not really having a strong identity. So like giving +1 to 4 random attacks seems like, I don't know, it seems like any other card could have replaced this.
Yeah. If we're thinking about like the, hey, let's attach it to the episode, the Timmy, Johnny, Spike, like it doesn't really tickle any of their senses.
Yeah.
There are cards that can provide more value for the Spikes. This isn't really the most interesting build around card for Johnny's. And I don't think the effect is big enough for Timmy's.
Yeah.
it's funny because it feels like it was trying to appeal to all 3 in a way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't quite hit there for any of them.
Yeah. But I think that it is something that they could build on in the future. So I kind of want to bring this up also because people have been talking about like, when's Phi going to get a card? And like, I think this is maybe a design space they could look at for that. So yeah, that's my card. Joel, what's your card for the week?
So my card, I think, I was flip-flopping between this card and Reckless Swing, but I'm going to go with Plasma Purifier, which is the one of the pieces of Exodia for Dash. It's a 2-cost item with no block. It's red. And it has an action to load it up with a steam counter. And it also has an action to remove a steam counter to give target Mechanologist pistol +1 for the turn. And you can only activate that effect once. So you can't like load and unload multiple times in one turn. And the reason why I like it is because it's very, you know, adjacent to the pitch that I had today, which was alternate win cons, where if you get 2 or 3 of these at once, then 1 pistol shot is going to be for 4 or 5 for 1 resource, which is like pretty overrate. And I also think tying it to another pitch in our episode, it appeals to the Johnny, Timmy, and Spike conversation.
You guys are going to be talking like that for like the next few weeks, huh?
Not just for this episode. Like for the Spike, I think this is a very targeted card for the slower matchups, like Guardian specifically. And then the Johnny, I think, would probably find the items that augment your pistol really interesting. And Timmy's would probably find a way to have like a bunch of items that augment your pistol in some way. Like,
how big can this pistol attack?
How big, yeah, and how many attacks per turn. So I don't know. I feel like this appeals to a lot of different people, and it's such an iconic card for Dash that I'm gonna miss seeing it being played at armories in general when she eventually leaves, because I feel like Dash is the only one that can use it, and Dash IO probably would not.
No, and honestly, I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because the few times I got the chance to play Han's Dash deck, I really enjoyed playing this, actually. It felt really powerful to pitch 3 blues and throw like 16 damage and just be like, yes, this game is all under my control.
Yeah, and it really highlights a form of mechanologist that I wish was designed around more, which is augmenting the pistol. Like, I'd love to see what other attachments Dash would invent to suit her needs. Like, I don't know, just something that I would love to see more of.
Frostbite on hit.
Never mind. Fuzzy, what do you got for us?
Okay, so nothing we recorded today so far sets this episode in any sort of timeline, but I'm going to do that now. It's right before pre-release. I'm stoked to play with all the new Part the Mistveil cards.
Did you get us a Part the Mistveil card?
You got us Wounding Blow, probably.
I want to talk about a Part the Mistveil card. But I have this rule where when I talk about a card, I sign it and give it to you guys. So I have a representative card that it's not really what I want to talk about. So we'll bring it to the end. So the 2 cards that I really want to talk about are Pass Over and Preserve Tradition. Pass Over is the blue Transcend card that banishes a target card from an opposing hero's graveyard. And Preserve Tradition does the opposite. It lets you put target action card from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. And both of them, they transcend if you played a blue card. And they perfectly counter each other. If you play Passover and your opponent responds with Preserve Tradition, targeting the card that Passover targeted, Passover will get countered, negated. It will not go back into your hand, and you'll be denying them those 3 chi resources.
Oh, wow.
And the same is true for the other card. If a player plays Preserve Tradition, targeting a card in their graveyard, their opponent can play Passover, targeting the card that was going to be preserved, and it negates the Preserve Tradition. The Preserve Tradition does not transcend. It goes into the graveyard. No chi for you.
That seems annoying to play against.
Now, the caveat to that is, if you want to transcend with your card, you have to still play a blue before you resolve your counter card. So you have to
get the chi.
To get your chi, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to deny them their chi. It's a little bit harder. Well, first of all, you have to have this card at the right time in order to do it. But it's even harder to actually get to flip and get your chi at the same time. But like screwing over an opponent's turn just by denying them chi, I think is worth spending a card for, even if you're getting a chi source out of your deck. So I'm heading into pre-release. This is my dream. I want to screw someone over using one of these cards to counteract the other. I'm going to try to do everything I can to make it happen. I don't know if it's going to come up.
I'm going to have to think about this whenever I pair up.
Fuzzy's a fucking menace, bro.
Bro, and it won't matter what deck he's on. I'm going to God, he can fucking do it.
This is such like a whack interaction, and it's like kind of specific, but definitely something you should be aware of going into pre-release. I know all of our listeners won't hear it until after pre-release, but maybe in draft, when you're getting into all these Part the Mistveil drafts, be on the lookout for ways that you can like screw over your opponent's chi resources with these cards.
So what are your stand-in cards?
So I brought 2 copies of Yellow Memorial Ground. Because Memorial Ground does a similar thing to Preserve Tradition.
Not blue though.
So you could use, I didn't have 2 blue Memorial Grounds. I looked. So if your opponent plays Passover, you could use Memorial Ground in response to delete their Passover, or vice versa. You could use Passover to negate a Memorial Ground. And I brought 2 copies to sign for you guys as my tradition.
Let's go.
One for you and one for you.
Oh my god, this signature's horrendous.
Don't be mean.
Your 2s look different from each other.
Oh no.
Oh, yours is so much better. Mine's just... Looks like he vomited on my cart.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. This was a fun episode. Hope you liked it. Please give us your feedback.
And if you don't want to hear another one, let us know. That's important feedback.
Bye-bye.
So
Bye. Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by Joel Recinos, Clark Moore, and Fuzzy Delp. Our executive producer is Talon Stradley. Music is produced by Dillon Hulse. Logo is designed by Han V. And our sound mixing is done by Christopher Moore. Last but not least, thank you, the listener, for taking the time to listen to our podcast. Be sure to give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me podcast.
Before I do, I want to debrief with you.
Sure.
Here's my script. I want to tell you what I'm doing. This will go fast, you know?
So he says.
So, here's my plan.
Listeners, he has shown us a multi-page Google Doc. It is all paragraph text. There are no bullet points.
Still scrolling. I am planning for the sake of getting through things smoothly. That way we can go quickly, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Just like the stretch goals on the Clan Wars.
Okay.
I related it to me to make it relatable. Now I understand what Fuzzy is saying.
That's so real.
Yes, I've made it about me.
That's fucking funny.